Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of When Life Happens. My name is Simone Boersema. I'm your host and owner of Kinderwijs Gouda. As a pedagogue, I'm specialized in multiple trauma, and today I will speak to a woman who really endured multiple traumatic events. I quote her when I say, "We are not defined by what knocks us down, we are defined how we got back up." And she really lives these sentences. Madeleine Black endured multiple traumatic events, and now she's inspiring the world. In this conversation, she shares with us her journey of survival, of healing, forgiveness, transformation, and hope. Dear Madeleine, thank you very much. Welcome, Madeleine Black. Thank you so much for wanting to participate. You have an amazing life story, wrote a book about it, Unbroken, gave a TEDx talk about your life narrative, and now we're sitting here and I would like to ask you, can you share that life story with us?
Yeah, well, I guess the story that I share is one from when I was just 13 years old. To cut a long story short, I went on a night out that went very badly wrong,
Mhm.
and two young men that took me home to my friend's mum's empty flat weren't there to help me because I was very drunk. They were there for something else, and they both proceeded to rape me over a 4 to 5 hour period.
That's that's really a life event which can hurt you and destroy you. How did you cope with that?
I don't think I really did cope to start with. It did hurt me and destroy me, but I mean, I guess it's an instinct. I just pushed it far, far out of my mind as possible. So it took me a long time to retrieve the memories from that night. But in the meantime, even though we push things far away, it's got to come out of your body in some way. So it was a very dark time for me. I developed an eating disorder. I had suicide attempts, which landed me into a children's psychiatric hospital for a few months. I had fears, phobias, anxieties. I used alcohol and drugs just to really numb out from everything. And yeah, depression. It wasn't a good space. My self worth, my self belief, everything was just altered. The world just wasn't a safe place for me anymore.
No, I think, and when you say okay, you mention all of these dark places you've been in your youth. How did you survive those places?
I guess you just go through it really. You just go through the motions, and until eventually you turn a corner and things start to change. I guess you have to see that you're in these dark spaces to start with. I don't think for a long time I was just in it. I didn't
But
really.
how did you saw that?
Well, I would say through love, really.
Love. That sounds really romantic. So tell me.
So when I was 17, I met my husband. I was traveling in Israel for a year. He was a Scotsman. I was from England. And it was just the first person that I felt really safe with, I guess. I kind of knew that I could trust him. Didn't trust men or situations at all. And when I came back to the UK, he was in Scotland, I was in England, he still wanted to see me, which I didn't understand because I just thought, that why would you want to be with someone like me? I was contaminated, dirty.
But that's very crucial thing to say there. You say, okay, I felt really that I could trust him. Where did that came from? Because trust is a vital thing, and you were lost in that for over decades. So
Yeah,
where did that came from?
I don't know, just instinct, something, a guiding light. I don't know. It just came in, and when I look back now, I do believe that he was an angel sent to save me. We're still together now, like 37 years later. So yeah, just somehow life intervened and our paths met, and it's yeah, obviously it's put me on a good journey. So when I met him, 5 years later, he asked me to marry him, and I said I would never become a mum, but I have got three girls. So obviously, I changed my opinion about that. But making that decision to become a mum was really what I call my best revenge. I just thought if I don't, then these two men have won. I'm
Mm-hmm.
giving them all my power and control, and they didn't even know about it, you know. And I thought it's only going to harm me if I don't do this. It's going to hold me back. I'll always regret it. So I just thought I'm going to not just become a mum. I'm going to refuse to be identified by what had happened, and I'm going to just live the best life that I possibly could. And for a long time, after having my 3 girls, I thought, you know, that was it. But trauma is kind of multi-layered. We have to work it at different layers at different times in our life. And it took till my eldest daughter became 13 that all my memories resurfaced because of a combination of things. I was studying psychotherapy, I was doing loads of personal development courses, and Anna was 13. So that was the last chunk of healing that I did, really.
And you say, okay, then a lot of things came up. What kind of things happened within your system, within your body, that came up? How do you feel it?
Oh, just all the memories returned, and at first I just thought I was going mad. You know, I thought
Mm.
if it had been that bad, I would remember it. You know, now as a therapist, I understand when things are really bad, our mind is amazing. It can just squash the memories down. You know, and also on that night, I really kind of left my body. So when the memories returned, they felt very surreal and very dreamlike, because it almost as if it was kind of in a dream, because I wasn't present in my body. But yeah, it's interesting. I went back to therapy for about 3 years. And after a while, it wasn't really the pictures or the information that I was being given that were disturbing my mind. It was what I was doing with my mind. My refusing to believe that denial was actually far harder than the pictures themselves, because somehow I thought that this was a reflection of me. You know, if people knew, they would look at me differently, they would be disgusted, they wouldn't want to know me. Now I understand, you know, it was a crime committed against my body, and it had nothing to do with me, what I was wearing, what I was drinking that night. It came down to the fact that these 2 men chose to rape me and nothing else. But it was a very hard time for my mind when all these memories returned.
Yeah. I spoke now with a couple of women who also endured this horrible experience, a similar experience. And it all comes down at the beginning at shame.
Yeah.
Shame to speak out, shame. And they all say, okay, it was my fault. I had the idea it was my fault. Why, or better said, where is that coming from, you think, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, it's such a personal, intimate crime that we take it on board, and then we're not supported by society. You know, even in the late 1970s, I thought, well, you know, I'd lied to my mum and dad, and I'd bought alcohol, and I'd met boys. You know, I'd already was thinking this was my fault. You know, when we hear music, when we listen to, when we see films and we watch advertising and the objectifying women and the merely just saying that we're just sex objects or there's sexual objectification, you know, we're just made to feel it's our fault. So we're not supported by society, as well as our own negative image of ourselves. So yes, so many people are drowning in shame.
You think it's still there?
Yes.
Nothing has changed in that opinion?
It has got better, you know, with the Me Too. It wasn't just a moment, it is a movement. It helped people to find their voice. But, you know, in the UK, especially where I live in Scotland, of all cases that make it to court, which is very few, only like 5% will end in a conviction. So why would you bother reporting it? Why would you bother going to the police, you know, or you go on trial? Can be so re-traumatizing and re-triggering that, you know, I don't blame women that don't report. I never reported it either.
So is it correct if I say that there are a lot of obstacles to overcome even before you can speak out?
Yeah, well, the biggest obstacle is the shame and how we're perceived by society and how we perceive ourselves, and that shame is really hard to break through, but it's possible, and it's actually by doing the very thing I thought I could never do, you know, speaking out publicly, writing about it. That's the way I shattered my shame. I had to really stand into my shame, I guess, to stop hiding from it, stop running from it, stop listening to it, because it just lied to me for years and years and years, telling me I was this less than person because this crime had been committed against my body. So yeah, just ignoring that voice in my head is ultimately what did it.
Yeah. And I now get back then to the angel in your life.
Mm.
At some point you had to tell him.
Yeah.
How did that went?
Well, he always knew that I had been raped, but he didn't know all the details. So it really took many, many years later, even after I had birthed my three daughters and I was going back to therapy again. My therapist said, maybe it would be a good idea to tell your husband, Stephen, exactly what went through.
Mm-hmm.
And I was still so filled with shame. I thought he might be put off if he knows all the details of what they did to me. He might see me.
So shame came back again. It was again one of the major topics.
Yeah, it was just so many layers and layers of shame. You don't even realize until you hear yourself having these thoughts. And so the only way I could tell him, we're lying in bed in the dark, under the duvet, holding my hand, and I told him, and I was, really worried about telling him. And I said, I thought I was going to die. They were so violent and everything. But he said, you didn't. And he was very grounded and connected to this moment. He said, you didn't die and you're here. And I went, yeah, that's right. He'd actually make a very good therapist, because we don't want to get caught in somebody's fantasy. Well, you didn't die. You are here. You're okay. So yeah, it was a relief to finally, after many, many years, to tell him all the details.
So what happened inside your body when you felt that? When you told him that?
Yeah, it was a release. You just let go of all that he's actually still okay. He's not put off or disgusted like I thought he would be. Yeah, it's like there's a part of you inside that's kind of put in the deep freeze, and then it melts, that it can defrost button can be started, and when you let go of that, it just creates more space inside of me and softened, I guess, just surrendering to the facts. Because my biggest battle, as I said, was just denial. And once I surrendered to the facts of that evening and accepted that, stopped pretending that it didn't happen, my life was so much easier. There was like an internal battle before I did that, pushing and pulling and pushing and pulling. And yeah, acceptance, surrendering to the facts, that's what made the difference to me.
Would you also say that after that night you told your husband that your relationship got even more close, more connected?
We were always pretty connected, but yeah, it took away a bridge, took away a blockage and created more of a bridge, I suppose.
Okay. What would you tell you have now 3 kids of your own, 3 girls?
Yeah.
Were you afraid, or did you have other feelings when you start writing your book?
Not when I was writing my book, because I already knew by then, and when my book was getting published, before it was published, I said to them if they wanted to read it, so Anna, my eldest one, she's now 28, she read the chapter about herself. Mimi, my middle daughter, read the very last chapter, and Layla, who wasn't actually even 13 yet, she was about 11 or 12, she read the whole thing. So
wow.
Yeah, I know, it's very
when she was 13, she read the whole thing.
And it has all the details in, so I don't really hold back about what happened.
What was their response?
They were fine, they really are okay, because they can see me now and they see how I live my life, and they know that whatever happens, we can heal, you can get past it and turn it around and make it better, not just for you, but for other people. So they know that. So
there wasn't, again, a feeling of shame coming up towards your daughters, like, okay, what would they think, or how would they react? I think because they were so open about it, and Layla, my youngest, just said, I'm really sorry that happened to you, Mum, and, just help me. And that was fine. They've always, I've always told them, maybe not in a language like I would use today. So when they were little, they always knew that 2 boys hurt Mummy very badly, and they didn't really know the details. But I was always very honest, because obviously, I was worried 3 girls, the same could happen to them. So we had a lot of, not rules, but I was very open and honest, if they're going out, I don't care if they're drunk, if they're doing drugs, whatever, if they're not happy, just phone me. I come and get them. I won't judge them. So they've always known that they can really tell me anything. It doesn't mean that they do, because they're still my daughters. But yeah, I try to be as open as possible in communication. Yeah, you mentioned now a couple of things you did in your parenting. Do you think your parenting style in that area is different than towards to other mothers because of your experience? That's impossible to say, isn't it? Because even if this hadn't happened to me, would I not still be worried that something could happen to my girls? No.
I'll
That
never.
perhaps you're more focused on that point, or have more rules, or speak about it more openly, or having more conversations. I don't know.
Don't like to try and find the reason why. I just do what I do, and that's all I can do. And I think every mother, they just do the best job with the tools that they had. If I know now if I could go back and know what I know now, it would be very different again. But I didn't know that then, so I have to just do it how I can do it.
Yeah. I want to go back to your childhood. After the event just happened, you went home with your friend, and the other day you go to school and pretend nothing happened.
Yeah.
Can you take us or me with you to the days after that? What is going on in your mind and your body?
Just numb, just not allowing myself to feel, think, and I really shut down internally. So externally, I looked like just a grumpy teenager, one that didn't speak, one that didn't eat, one that hated herself, one that hated the world, angry at everything, angry at God, angry at life. Why does this happen? And then I didn't even know what had happened. I didn't have the words to really explain it, and I just really pushed it deep, deep down inside of me. But yeah, I was just a bitter, angry, hostile teenager. So I guess looking out, you could think I was just a normal teenager, one that just grunts and in responses. But I was struggling big time.
If you look from a different perspective now, what would you say to those surrounding you? Say, okay, on that point and point, you could have seen that there was something happening with me.
I've done a second TEDx, which isn't out yet, and it's actually all about
Oh,
shame.
wow.
Why I'm shaming my shame. And I talk about, rather than looking at the labels of being a difficult child or one that have behavior.
Exactly. That's my question, actually. So why look behind those curtains?
Yes, where we should need to change the questions to what's wrong with you to what's happened to you, to really try to understand,
Exactly.
rather than just labelled, like a naughty schoolgirl, wasn't doing her work. When if they'd looked just a few months before, I always did my work and I always got top marks, and then I just literally turned overnight. So yeah, even when I was writing my memoir, I applied for my hospital notes because I wanted to see did they have any idea, and they didn't. They sent me back about 200 pages, and some of the pages were for when I had tonsils out or when I had a kidney infection, and just a few, like 70 pages out of 200 pages, were for like a 3-month visit to a psychiatric ward. And they just put me down as a teenager with depression and eating disorder, and they didn't know I'd had a trauma. And I think, wasn't it flippin' obvious?
What kind of questions you think, in your opinion, they should have asked you?
What happened? What's the matter? Why have you changed? But you see, I had contact with them a few years ago. My mum was very ill when I was growing up, and she was bedridden, and I developed epilepsy. I had an epileptic fit, and they just picked up where they left off. They just thought it was the family dynamics, my mum being ill. So very, very, I guess, lazy medicine. Very lazy medicine. They didn't see that perhaps this could be a different trauma, this could be something different. And they just carried on where they left off, a couple of years before.
So you also didn't have a social backup at that point?
From the hospital, no. Oh, at home, you mean?
Yeah, at home.
Yeah, it's not my mum's fault, obviously. I think it was maybe part of it because things were tough. So when my friends said, let's have a night out, I just thought it was a bit of excitement, a change from everything that was going on. Because, yeah, it was hard to have a mum that was unable to do the things that other mums could do, and to see her ill as well. That was hard.
Yeah. So, and you speak now about you gave another TED talk.
Yeah.
What is your message there?
It's called Why I'm Shaming My Shame, to really show people how we drown in shame, how it lies to us, how we believe it, and how it's not true. Just to stop running from it, stop hiding from it. When we shine a light on it, it just can't exist.
And if I ask you how should we do that? What's your answer?
Yeah, I don't expect everybody to do like I do and stand on a stage or to speak publicly, but find someone really to share your story with. Stop denying it for a start, and you find a therapist or a friend. And if you can't find someone, write it down. Tell yourself your story, because The shame isn't yours. The shame is never us, the victim of the crime. It always belongs to the perpetrator. 100% of all rapes are caused by rapists, nothing else.
And how do you feel now at this point in your life about your past, about what happened?
It doesn't impact on my life at all, which is also why I want to share it, because I want people to see that you can get past anything. With the right support and the right help, the right mindset, we absolutely can move beyond anything, and you can actually grow through what you go through. So now, if anything, I would say I have post-traumatic stress, not post-traumatic stress, I have post-traumatic growth. It made me see that, yeah, if I am so much stronger than I think I am, all of you out there listening are so much stronger than you think you are too. We're not born, we don't become resilient, we have that resilience inside us already, and it's just about tapping into that and not listening to our mind a lot of the time.
But that's a crucial part, resilience, right?
Yeah.
And how do you think we should tap into that? Because I met some people who really can't feel their resilience in them.
Yeah, but I think especially for victims of sexual violence, it's not listening to the shame. It's recognizing how often you pay attention to it to start with, growing a better awareness. How often do you actually believe what the shame says to you? And look at the evidence. If your shame is telling you you're worthless or you're less than other people, where is your proof? Where is your evidence? And really, when you focus on the facts and the evidence, it's not true. And for me, because I left my body that night and it took me years and years to get back in my body, everything I've done is about staying grounded, staying connected in. And my way won't be the way for someone else. There's many, many paths to healing, but find something to connect back in and to steady yourself. Because when we're not steady, that's when we're kind of shaking and wobbling and very vulnerable to everything else. So yes, try and stay as steady as possible with it all.
You say, and I saw that you mentioned it many times, you dissociated that night, right? With your body. You said it a couple of minutes ago. How did you get back in?
Yeah, well, a shitload of therapy, loads of talking therapy, but also I did a lot of body therapy. When I was caught in denial, my therapist could see my struggle, and he said maybe you should go for some therapeutic massage, which I didn't know anything about. So I went along, not really thinking much was going to help in my old cynical mindset. And I could hear this person crying and screaming and kicking and fighting with the therapist. And I thought, oh, who's making all that noise? But then I saw it was me. First of all, I was mortified. I guess I was more shame. But it actually really did something. It really showed me that I would not behave like that on purpose because, I'm an English woman. We don't like to make a fuss. And it really showed me that whilst I couldn't trust my mind, I had to trust my body because I wouldn't behave like that on purpose. And the shaking and the tears I knew had to come from a deep, deep place inside. And it was the trauma being released. And so then that sent me on another journey of trying alternative kind of body therapies. So I've done fire walks, I've done transformational breath work, I've taken plant medicine like San Pedro, loads of stuff, breath work, hypnotherapy, cranial sacral massage, loads of things. But the therapeutic massage really helped because the trauma, I understand it now, gets caught in our cells.
Mm-hmm.
Had the ability just to tap into where the trauma held patterns were in my body. So for example, when I went for transformational breath work with an amazing guy called Alan Dolan, who's also known as the breath guru, my hands would just go into these unbelievable tight fists and I couldn't open my fingers, and that used to panic me. And he said, it's just fear. There's just fear being released from your body. Don't worry about it. But then you get fearful when you're caught in those patterns. And over time, I would go for breathwork and my hands would just stay relaxed. But that fear pattern just gripped me, literally gripped my body. And so it really helped to see that, yeah, it's in your body, it's in your system, and it was just working it in different ways. And then I did sports, I've done karate, windsurfing, running, yoga, walking, everything just to land back inside my body.
And now you have grip on your body?
Yeah, now because I've worked and worked on my self-awareness and my personal development, I can see when I go off or when things aren't okay, and I think, oh, what are you doing? Come back in. Are you okay? Settle yourself, ground yourself, use your breath. You're fine. It's not happening now. So to stay in this moment as much as possible is the trick. And I still get caught. I still get, especially at the start of COVID, I was like, I just stopped working as a therapist. All my work's gone. What am I going to do? Which is why I started my own podcast show to share other people's stories of positivity and hope and motivate others. And I still get rocked. But the idea is you can get knocked off your surfboard many, many times, but just carry on surfing. Get back on your surfboard and just ride the waves. So that's what I do. I just want to become a better surfer in life.
And how do you pass those fears? Because that's sometimes where people get stuck, right? You're afraid of something, so we don't do it.
Yeah.
How did you overcome that?
Well, I saw my fears. I got to a point where I woke up to what I was doing, and I saw everything was based on what had happened to me already, and everything else was based on what could happen. And so I thought it was my imagination. It was all rubbish, so I didn't give in to my fears, and I put myself, which is a bit strange maybe, into places that scared me. So I guess I did my own kind of exposure therapy, but I didn't realize it at the time. So it was men and being out of control scared me the most. So, for example, at 41, I went to my first karate class, which was filled with men and all black belts and like 3 women, and it terrified me. But I still go now. It's like 15 years later, and they're a brilliant crowd of people, So just to put myself into situations, just to test my mind. I couldn't even put my rubbish bin at the end of the garden if my husband was away for the binman because I was scared of the dark if it was nighttime. So I would just wait for the following week. So forcing myself to go into the dark and take my rubbish bin down to the end of the garden and looking around and going, actually, it's dark. And look up, look at the stars. Aren't they amazing? Look at the moon. So recognizing that the fears didn't really exist. Unless I was being chased down the street by a man with a gun or a bear, I was actually really okay.
So a lot of courage you have within you.
Well, eventually I got tired of being scared. I got tired of, being paranoid and, risking, doing all the assessments for every situation, not taking any risk. I want to live my life. I survived what I've been through, but I want to thrive. I want to really have a good life. What's the point of just, mumbling through life? I wanted it to be, well, why did this happen to me? Did it happen to me just for me to shut down completely? So if anything, I guess it's an extreme way, but it woke me up. It kind of shot an arrow into my heart and made me realize that life is actually for living, and I am going to live my life as well as I possibly can.
Well, I think you do. You reach out to a lot of people. Your podcast is doing very well, and it's very good. I listen it as well, so I really recommend it to everyone to listen it. Now we're speaking about what you did to actually save yourself as a survivor of sexual abuse. What can you say to those people who are standing next to a survivor of sexual assault and want to help them or support them?
I would say don't ever judge anyone. Don't ask any questions. Just go at their pace. Treat them as if they're someone that you really care for or love. Make sure they've got good food, run them a bath, give them good music, just support them. But yeah, the biggest thing is just don't ask too many questions, because then I think the person can say, well, why do they think that? Do they think it's my fault? So just no blaming, no shaming, no judging, just be there to support them as much as you can, whatever that looks like, and go at their pace, go at what their needs are. Some might want to go out, some might want to stay in. Just check they're okay, send them text, phone them, go round. If they want to go for support, go for support. If they want to report, go to the police station, but don't put any pressure on them to be a certain way, because there are very distinct patterns, but everybody still will respond in their own unique way to any trauma.
Yeah, so walk beside them.
Sorry?
Just walk beside them and be there.
Yeah,
exactly. Oh, I think you do really an amazing job. And well, I mentioned it before, the podcast you are making with inspiring people from really across the globe are amazing.
Yeah, I'm so lucky that I get to speak to them, because I sit with their wonderful energy and then I get to share it and I hear the feedback, and people think, well, if they can get through that, then I can get through this. And that's really what the message is about. And it's called Unbroken, like the name of my book, because I really believe that none of us are broken beyond repair. We all have that ability to repair ourselves.
Well, I think that's a really nice way of ending the podcast, and to share that sentence with others. We are not broken. We can all repair ourselves. Yeah. Thank you, Madeleine, very much for your contribution.
Thank you so much, Simone, for asking me on your show.